Cool. So in this video, I will do a very brief illustration or kind of brainstorm of a scene design in terms of a CG. Okay. So if you think about the canvas, one way to think about it is I want to do a complicated scene rendering such that I might be able to make a YouTube video on walkthrough, brief highlight of process, key steps, and some operational details. What am I talking about? I'm talking about I want to make a render, and the render will take a lot of time. It's like a few hundred hours. Let me put some numbers down here. And what I'm trying to do in this video is to break down the steps that is needed for completion of this render. So naturally, if you think about it, if you are going to spend more than 100 hours on rendering, it better be something worth it. It must have some particular value, not just visual interest. So what am I going to do? Well, very naturally, I'm going to do something like a scenery for the City of 9, Project 9. And more specifically, what are you going to do about it is, if I open Google Earth, and if I go to the lakefront, okay, so remember that in the City of 9 we have this particular place, a particular scenery, that there is a lot of traditional Chinese style 庭院风格, and there is like man-made lake, and there's this restaurant, a tea house on top of the lake, something like that. Now imagine this very same area, but all of those things have been changed into greeneries. Okay, so it's not this many structures. All those things has been changed into greeneries. And we have a particular tea house on this side. We have a particular tea house on this side, right? Chinese style tea house. And we have some man-made okay, this is a bad drawing, but you get the point. This is like man-made mountain. And we have those 桥梁啊, you see those kind of structures that connect those things, right? I probably shouldn't draw this, but you get the idea that there is something going on this side, right? Something like this, and they are connected together, right? And those paths 就是廊, right? 廊. And that scenery, and the camera will be looking from we have a camera here, something like that, a camera that's looking at this angle. You know, camera might be larger, looking at this angle, see something. And there might be like a robot show, right? There is like a particular kind of you know, a robot show, and there is, you know, water splash. That's the idea. So we want to do this particular rendering, right? And how are we going to do the rendering? The rendering is going to be about some sort of like, we are standing on this side, and I'm going to draw it. It's like this is the horizon, right? And we have the tea house on this side. We have the tea house on this side, right? And we have the road and path on this side, right? And then we have the fake mountains, you know, the fake mountain on this side, right? And we have water splash all over the place, and we have a robot show here, right? So I was thinking maybe it will take at least 100 hours. That's an underestimate. Let me see how. So I'm trying to break down how many hours it will take for this particular thing. Let's see the rendering. Yeah. How are you going to render it? Okay, let me just back 倒推一下. So in terms of render, it's not just render. There are several steps. There is actually render of elements. How will you break it down, right? You have several parts. You have the background, including sky, the ocean, a background, and you have the maybe the midground, the mountain stuff, midground, and you have the foreground. And on top of which you have one extra thing, that's the effects. So we plan to do this ocean simulation as an effect layer, right? And on top of that, after you got all the render elements, you can do a composition. Composition will be done in Affinity Photo, of course, and the composition might actually be the easy part. We can say the composition takes just like 5 hours maximum, right? The effect, the purely, if we consider just the render, the background itself will not take a lot of time. We can use TerraGen, right? So this is going to be like Affinity Photo, and this is like TerraGen. And the render time for this thing will take at most, I guess, at most 5 hours, or maybe I give you 8 hours. And then for the midground, it's going to be made with the, so midground refers to this thing, the mountain side stuff, right? You can use Blender, and of course for the mountain stuff, you might want to use the water machine. And just consider the render. To render out the terrain from what the machine will take like 4-5 hours render time, and to render out stuff in Blender will take as much as 12 hours at most. That's just the final render, right? So for test render, you got to multiply this time times 1.5, total time times 1.5. And for foreground, the detail stuff, we're going to have two options. You can either use the Houdini with RenderMan or Blender. It doesn't matter. So this thing will take around, it's the most detailed, at most 30 hours. And then we can consider the effect. The effect will be done in Houdini, of course. And that will take about, including simulation, right? Including simulation and the rendering. I guess it takes 15 hours, maybe. I'm not sure. Simulation might actually take longer. Let me give you 25 hours because I have never done it before. So that gives us a total of 8 plus 12 plus 5 plus 30 plus 25 plus 15 plus 5, which gives us 20, 35, 40, and this is another 40, which gives us 100 hours, okay? And then 100 times 1.5, 150 hours for rendering alone. Good. Now we can record the number here and update our early result. It's definitely not 100, so for render it's 150. Now about modeling. For modeling, the background takes the sky modeling, right? The sky can take at most. So in terms of the background, we have the sky, we have the ocean. That's the most important part. Sky can take, let's be fast, give it 5 hours. 1 day's content, right? And the ocean, let me give it 4 hours, 3 hours. It's almost like 1 day for this one, right? And for that's the background. And then if we consider the midground, the mountain and the robot stuff, so that contains the robot, that contains the mountain. Mountain can be fast. I guess mountain can take, the mountain is actually very important. It's a huge element. The base model can take 5 to 8 hours, and then the detailed model can take as many as 24 hours, that's 3 days, to add up all the details. And the robot is modeling alone. If you have already a cool concept, the modeling alone can take at most, I don't know, 2 days. That's like 16 hours. And then the texturing and the UV mapping, if you just do a one particular camera specific angle, the UV mapping stuff shouldn't take too long. And that will take, I guess, 8 hours to do UV, and maybe 8 more hours to do texture. Good. And then that is the middle ground. For the foreground, the house, the path, the greenery. The foreground really contains a few components. You have the house, which is the restaurant, the path, which is the road, and the greenery, and the other infrastructures. Completely depend on the amount. Let me see, we do a 10 items. Greenery, we do a 10 items. The path road, we do a 2 items, or maybe 4 items. The house region count as 2 items. And if every single item will contain the modeling and the texturing and the UV. Okay, so here I'm not talking about design yet. So here's the UV for each item. I guess at the most the UV can take you 4 hours, and texture can take 4 hours for base texture plus 8 hours for detailing. And the modeling part completely depends on the complexity of a model. It can take from 8 to 64 hours, which is like 8 days for each model. And so here we have a total of 26 times, how many hours is this? We have 12, 16 plus 64, 80 hours. That gives us a 2080 hours. Really? That looks a little bit ridiculous. Okay, and that's the foreground. And for the effect, you do it the water splash. And maybe the smoke from the robot. Robot burns oil, burns gas, and the gas produces smoke. And maybe there are some kind of fire in the restaurant kitchen, right? The cooking fire, the normal fire, not any disastrous fire. So these things can take time. Fire can be quick, 4 hours. Smoke is you don't even need to, like, you can use pre-made effects, you know, those images stuff. You don't need to even simulate that. The water part can be, you know, need to communicate 3 hours for base, and let me do 2 days for fine tuning. That's the effect. That's basically everything. Okay, so how long does that take? So the effect takes like 2 days. Is 8, 2 times 8, 16, which is 19 plus 4, 23, 27. So we have so for the effect we have 27, and for the foreground we have for the foreground we have 2000 something. Okay, this is a little bit confusing now. This is 27, and for the middle ground we have somewhere here, which is 16 hours plus 8 hours plus 8 hours, 24, 32, 5 to 8, 40 plus 24, it's 64 hour. And the background should be the part that takes less time. This is just 1 day, which is 8 hours, and that gives us a total of plus 8 plus 84 plus 27, 2179. 2179. All right, let me wear some clothes. Good. So that is the actual implementation time. However, there is also another very important component. Those two are the implementation. But there's another component. It's called research component. Research and design component. Now for this component, it has two parts. The first part is the study of subject and tool, which can take infinity hours if you really think about it. The other one is the design or the reference stage. Now, in terms of the reference stage, what we do is for each of the elements, we try to find a suitable design that suits the style. If you consider the background should be fine. You can just ignore the design time. Think about the background, what the background should look like while you are working on it. Or at the most, I can give you, because you need to decide the proper scenery and what else that shows up in the background. Maybe there's a tianzhu in the background, right? So I give you 8 hours for background research. And then there's the middle ground. Now for the middle ground, we are mostly concerned with the robot and the mountain. The robot part. So you need at least 1 day to find the reference and come up with some base idea. And you need 1 day to draw stuff, to draw out various designs. And you need 1 more day to consolidate your ideas. That's it for the robot. And for the mountains is a tricky thing. I think you can do is you can spend 1 day playing with water machine, and you can spend 1 more day to further contemplate that, and spend 1 day to get the better idea for the mountain. And that's the middle ground. And for the foreground, including those many things, now the house and the what's that called, restaurant, I think depending on, I guess like this model might have worked. It's just 3 days for each item, right? Yeah, that will work. 3 days for each item. So we have 26 items times 3 days. Each day is like 8 hours, 24 hours, which will give us 26 times 20. It's 420 plus a 144, which gives 664 hours for the research. And the effect, probably you can get it done in at most 2 days. So how many hours is that? If you count all the hours, this one gives us 8 plus 6 times 8 plus 664 plus, I'm going to double check this number, 2 times 8. So that is how many? Let me see, 26 times 24. Okay, it's not that much. So plus 8 plus 6 times 8 plus 2 times 8. 696 hours. We have a total of 696 hours. Now the study and the tool stuff we can do is to spend 1 week on each tool, which is 7 days on each tool. We have 4 tools. 4 times 7 times 8, which gives us 4 times 7 times 8, 224 hours. Good. So we have a 224 hour. Now the total hours is going to be research and design 224 plus 696, and implementation 2179 plus 150, which gives a total of this much hours. Now this much hours divided by 8 is 406 days, and 406 minus, it's 1 year plus 41 days, 1 month. Good. That is the base. Now the final presentation should be the easy part. You collect all the progress stuff, things that you work on during the progress, and screenshot videos, interactive contents, and you can make a video out of it in just, I guess. The video production can take you at most 2 days, but the difficult part is the writing, not including scripting, okay? So the video introduction including the scripting. So the writing, I'm talking about the blog article, which takes a few days at most. 3 days. You need to craft it, you need to draft, you need to modify, you need to clean up, you know, shorten your content, make it summarize key points, like making an essay. You know, I would say like 3 to 5 days is not too much. You work on it. You work on the project for 1 year, you know, 3 to 5 days is not too much. Now that is the baseline. One thing we need to think about is that yeah, I'm wearing some pants. One thing we need to think about is there any way to shorten this workflow? It looks kind of excessive right now, you know. You need to spend so many hours on so many things. How many hours can we possibly reduce from this discussion? Oops, wrong button. How many hours can we possibly reduce from this discussion? There are a few things you might be able to reduce. So if you consider the part that takes the most time is the foreground design, right? And the foreground design here, we have the discussion of I think one thing you can definitely talk about is the greenery. You don't necessarily need to hand model 10 items. See what kind of stuff you can find already in your library. You can reduce this, I guess, to 5 plus 5. You know, we hand model 5. The rest 5 can just fetch it from the library, right? And in terms of the infrastructure, you might also be able to do that from the library as well, like Twinmotion, Unreal Engine library, right? So you can save a lot of hours from doing that. So we can reduce this to 5 plus 5 as well. So we save ourselves 10 items, 10 times 80, which is 800 hours. And rendering, I'm thinking maybe we can do the rendering directly in Unreal Engine. It doesn't look like a huge thing per se, in my opinion. You mean you can do the whole rendering stuff inside Unreal Engine? That is actually a very cool idea. You might not even need to do it in Unreal Engine. You can do it directly in Twinmotion. So this might not be superbly necessary, but you can certainly consider it. To reduce this to, I don't know, 10-hour work in terms of if you use Unreal Engine or Twinmotion. And let's say we do use this approach. that will reduce this render time. Let me say reduce it to 0, but it will add something else. What? It will add the learning time, 2 times 7 times 8, which is 112. So what we are doing is we're adding 112, but we are subtracting 150. Okay, this is subtraction as well. Okay, that's in terms of rendering. The modeling, anything else I can reduce from the modeling part? Not really. The tool study, and so far we are spending about 1 month on those tools, which makes sense. I don't think we need to reduce that, but in terms of design, we're spending a lot of time on design for those items as well. Now I'm thinking maybe since we have already done this part, maybe what we can do is to reduce 10 here as well. So we have like 10 times 24, which is 240. Now with this budget, what we are achieving here is rather we have 3249 and minus 150 minus 800 minus 240 plus 112, which gives us a total of 2171 divided by 8 is like 272 days. How many months is that? 272 divided by 30 is equals 9.5 months. Actually, just barely 9 months. 9 months rendering something this gorgeous is acceptable. Remember, we used to spend how long? We used to spend like 9 months working on a single software project. So spending 9 months on a rendering project only makes sense, right? But there's one question. If we're going to spend 9 months on one thing, on one particular thing with that very strong obsession, that very strong motivation, we need to ask ourselves, is there any best thing better? Anything, okay, not anything. Anything better we should work on more urgently. Can we think of something more relevant? Don't avoid doing the right thing. The idea of the city of line. Is there anything else, any particular rendering that we can do that is more urgent, that gives us a better feeling about it? Now I leave this question for you to contemplate on your own, but there's other thing that we need to think about. Just in terms of this thing itself, we should, during the design phase, that is during this phase, during this phase, surprise, during the design phase, that come up with more engaging and meaningful composition. Tell a story. That reminds me of something I forgot to mention. That is, we need to add some people. The people time. When we consider adding people time, I will do a very, very rough estimate. I will bring back all those hours, which brings us back to 1 year plus 1 month days. Alright, so we're back here. If we want to bring back people, we need to model. We need to reference and design people, their postures, their actions, their clothes, their stuff. And we need to model them, somehow find asset for them. And not animation, definitely not animation, but we need to pose them. So that will take some time. So it brings us back, let's say 1 year. This is a 1 year rendering. okay, I have to ask myself one more time this question. This is necessary to spend 1 year on this thing. Because if you, no, the question is like not necessary. Is there any way to shorten this time? Because when you think about it, if you just use twin motion, what you might be able to do is you might have a huge library of people already. Okay, not necessarily the kind of people who wear clothes that I like, but modern people, no problem with that. We might be able to make use of that. And why not? You have twin motion. Why don't you make use of that? So if you think about that, so the 1 hour is baseline. So but the question is there any way to do it more efficiently? Right? And now you are talking about it. I think there actually is a way. There is a way. And can you guess what? Can you guess what I am talking about? The big reveal. It's 3. The big reveal. 2. The big reveal in 1 second. We can do a matte painting, or simply just pure CG drawing. Maybe with the help of 3D layout constructions. Now, that is an assignment for you. That is an assignment for you. You need to do something. You need to do something, baby. So what do you need to do? Next assignment. Redo this video, but think and plan in terms of how long it will take if I simply do it using CG painting hybrid approach. Now I'm saying this because I'm really thinking in terms of that is, you can still use you can still use TerraGen for background clouds, but the point is, for foreground and midground, we might be able to simply paint those. What's more, we can allocate more hours on the design phase. Right. Good.